South Africa has officially been removed from the Financial Action Task Force grey list, and it marks an important milestone for the country's financial system. To tell us more about what it means, we have economist Dawie Roodt in the studio. Dawie, thanks so much for joining us today.
Always wonderful talking to you, Linda.
Well, let's start with the basics. What does the delisting mean for South Africa?
Well, it basically means, and I've got practical experience from this, because what I do, I manage people's money, and I manage it locally and internationally. And if I want to manage money internationally, then I have to open bank accounts and all sort of things for my clients. And it is extremely difficult while South Africa was on a so-called grey list, because the banks, some of them don't even want to do business with South Africa. And if they do business with South Africa, then they want all sort of extra papers and all sort of requirements. And I need to go back to my clients and tell them I need more papers and I have to fill in this form as well. And we have to wait. And my clients really get angry at me because they think that's where the problem is. But that's not the problem. The problem is international financial institutions are making my life very, very difficult. So there's a practical example. Simply because we were on the so-called grey list, international financial institutions didn't want to talk to us in some instances, and if they do want to talk to us, they make life very, very difficult. Now that South Africa is on a white list, my life is going to change, and quite dramatically so, because now I can open bank accounts much easier. They trust us. They do not have to scrutinize everything, or still I have to comply with a lot of laws and regulations, and I have to fill in all those forms still. But this time around, they don't assume that I'm laundering money. They don't have to assume that I'm sending money to a terrorist organization, because that was basically the assumption while we were on the grey list. So this is going to make my life much, much easier. And that inevitably means lower cost to the economy, easier flow of money, and all of that will eventually support the economy as well. But it doesn't mean that we can sit on our laurels now. We have to make sure that we stay off the grey list. But so far, I'm quite optimistic as far as that is concerned.
So does it make it easier for foreign businesses to operate in South Africa as well now?
Well, the other way around, it used to be it's always been fairly easy for foreigners to come to South Africa as long as they are on the white list. So the guys investing in South Africa are typically, well, the Europeans, and that's easy for them to buy and sell financial assets or any other assets in South Africa, and for the Americans. So that has always been quite easy for them to enter South Africa, but it has been quite difficult for us to enter their market. So it was really unfair. While they had this basically unhindered access to the South African financial markets, but the opposite wasn't true for us. But now it's an equal playing field, hopefully.
Well, you said South Africa shouldn't rest on its laurels. What kind of challenges remain?
Well, the challenges simply remain. Remember, previously we had all this legislation and all the rules and regulations. It wasn't properly applied. It wasn't properly enforced. So just makes, and I do know the last couple of years the enforcement was notched up quite a couple of ratchet points, I guess, the last couple of years, and I remember we had to answer all sort of questions to the regulators at all various levels. So that improvement in compliance need to be maintained. And from our side, again, that's practical experience that I know of. We've appointed people. We've got a whole division that's responsible for compliance, and they are very strict with us. Our internal compliance division are very strict with that. So that's what needs to happen, is that especially for financial institutions like us, for example, it's important to make sure that you stick to the rules and that the rules are properly applied by the authorities.
Do you think it would unlock foreign investment?
No, not well. What I did see is the financial markets improved a little bit. So I think we could see a little bit more interest in South Africa's financial markets. We have seen that recently, and we have seen that recently because of the valuation of South African financial assets. The South African equity market is very cheap. The bond market is really is absolutely sitting duck. So cheap, you can get an amazing real return. Recently, we've seen inflation coming down. All those sort of things are very, very good for the financial markets. But it's not necessarily that good for the real economy. Some of that will spill over into the real economy, of course. But what we need to do is to change certain other policies if you really want to attract big money coming into South Africa to invest in factories and mines and stuff like that. And I'm afraid those kind of policies are unlikely to change because those kind of policies go to to the essence of the ANC, and they are a bunch of leftish, communist, socialist, or whatever, and the kind of policies that they implement in South Africa simply does not fit in with a modern economy. I can refer to things like, for example, expropriation, for example. That's a very good example, without compensation. And even things like, for example, the Bella legislation, which basically puts a lot of more power in the hands of the Minister of Education. So it's what they are doing, and it fits in with their ideology. They want to centralize everything. And that doesn't go well for international investors. International investors do not want a government that believes in the centralization of everything. And that's unfortunately what we still have. So before we can really talk about significant inflows of money into South Africa, and especially FDI investments in South Africa, we need to change those kind of policies. Maybe I can just make a comment about the financial markets. The financial markets still, the South African equity markets, for example, is probably about 20 or 30% behind its peers internationally. The same goes for the bond market. The bond market will give you a real return of approximately 7% or close to 7%. That is the highest in the world that I'm aware of. So if you just put the right policies in place and say the right sort of things, it's quite possible that we can see the bond market running by 200 to 300 basis points. The equity market, especially since the international equity markets are so hot at the moment, the equity market can easily run 20 or 30%, for example. And that's going to be a huge boost to the economy. But like I've said, to sustain this and to get real bricks and mortar investments from abroad into South Africa, we need to change many policies and I'm afraid the ANC is unlikely to change that.
South Africa heads into local government elections next year amid deepening divisions within the ANC. Can we expect any serious changes in policy in the run-up to these elections?
Yeah, the elections that you're talking about, the local authority elections, probably by the end of next year. And so far, what we've seen is that the last general election, as well as some other elections that we have recently, it is very clear that the swing is away from the ANC, and significantly so. So I think the ANC will not be the majority party in the major metros anymore, like Pretoria or like Johannesburg, and even places like, for example, Durban. They've already lost Cape Town. So what we are going to see is coalition governments or coalition management somehow on local authority level. And that means, obviously, since new political parties will become more important, or other political parties will become more important, we could see a change in policy on the local level. So yes, I do expect a change at least the change in the way that things are being done. If you compare the ANC locally run municipalities to that of the DA run municipalities, there's a stark difference. The DA is just miles ahead in terms of efficiency and getting clean audits and stuff like that. And if you look at the municipalities mostly run by the ANC, they are dumps. It's dirty and it's badly run. It's corrupt and incompetent and all those sort of things. So you don't need to change policy necessarily. You simply have to do your job. And clearly, and I'm not a great DA supporter, just by the way, but clearly the ANC is not really doing a good job. The other political parties are clearly doing a much better job. You don't need to change policy. You just have to do a proper job.
Well, Dawie Roodt, thank you so much.